All right, thank you very much. Shannon Halbrook with Every Texan against HB530. Chairman Bell, Vice Chair Zwiener, thank you very much, members. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for letting me speak. I just want to tell you a little bit about Every Texan. Every Texan is an independent research organization that advocates for public policies to achieve equitable access to quality health care, food security, education, and good jobs. And one theme that I think runs throughout our work is the notion of economic security. We believe that our state is stronger when more Texas families are economically secure, they're better able to overcome short-term financial challenges, and they're free to make more successful long-term decisions about their families' lives and futures. HB 530 would prohibit localities in Texas from operating guaranteed income programs. We oppose HB 530 because we believe local communities should be able to use GI to offer greater economic security to struggling families. Research has shown that families receiving GI use it productively and their communities benefit broadly. So we hear a lot about the Texas miracle in Texas, how booming our economy is. We're the 8th largest economy in the world, et cetera. But I think probably most of you have also heard the statistics like, for example, 1/3 of Texans are housing cost burdened, and that includes more than half of renters. Healthcare costs make our uninsured rate for healthcare the highest in the country at over 17%. 40% of Texas households are suffering economic hardship. 60% of Texas school kids are economically disadvantaged. We all know these numbers. And this is where we think guaranteed income programs can help because they provide unrestricted cash assistance to selected households. It's a flexible and highly efficient policy at helping families get through crises and lowering the risk of permanent financial damage. We see it as an extension of the safety net for temporary emergencies and then a springboard for greater economic mobility in the long run. And the nice thing about these programs is they're pretty versatile. I mean, you can be time limited, they can be ongoing. The amounts, the timelines, the funding sources, the selection process of recipients, that can all vary and can be tailored by the local entity running the program. These programs are popular. First of all, 56% of voters in a 2023 study supported guaranteed income. That includes 53% of independents, and they're seeing growing support among Republicans under age 50 at 54%. These programs are good for families. We think that unrestricted cash allows families to decide what's best for themselves. Back on March 5th, we had a legislative advocacy day where we brought about 50 folks from across the state who had participated in some pilot programs, mostly in Austin and San Antonio. And they went around to offices and they told their stories, and they were powerful stories. And many of those folks are here with us today, and they're going to share their stories with you too. We find that in addition to what we hear from folks, we also see the data, which reflects from the pilot programs that people do use the money productively. For the vast majority of these folks use the money on necessities, food, rent, to catch up on debt or to avoid debt, to further their education, to start a business, et cetera. These programs are also good for communities, and we feel like everywhere in Texas, urban, rural, from Abilene to Brownsville to Beaumont to El Paso, people care about their communities, and they know that when their neighbors are economically secure, their entire communities can thrive. And that's what we want communities across Texas to be able to provide for their folks. Thank you very much. Appreciate any questions.
Representative Lowe.
Hi, thank you for coming today. So I want to point out two things. You said economic hardship and good for families. There are people across the state of Texas that cannot pay their property taxes right now. And they may not qualify for this income program. So do you think it's fair to put this burden on other people that would not necessarily qualify for this income program?
Well, it's a fair point. I think the nice thing about these programs being sort of run at the local level is that that's a decision that's left up to local officials, right? That's a matter between, I guess, voters and their, folks they vote for at the city council or the county commissioner's court.
What about the desire to work? If you're going to get guaranteed income, why get up at 5 a.m. to get on the bus and go to work?
That's also a fair question, and we oppose the work requirement. I think largely for two reasons. First of all, a lot of folks can't work because they're taking care of an elderly relative or a kid, or they have medical problems of their own. And then secondly, it adds some burden to the administration of the program as well.
So, how many people do you think should receive guaranteed income? Because I looked it up. We have about 31 million Texans living here. So, we obviously don't have enough money to give it to everybody. So, who do you think? Where's the cutoff?
That's absolutely right, sir. And I'm not here to advocate for a statewide guaranteed
Yes.
income program. We're just talking about this bill. I think that our communities should have the ability to do this if they want, if their voters express the will and their elected officials want to go through with that. And they have the funds. I mean, that's part of it too. And it's really up to them to decide, again, these programs, one nice thing about these programs, they're very versatile. You can make them as big or as small as you want. You can target people however you want. I think that we've seen a little bit of the research kind of varies with these programs. I'll admit that. We see a lot of good statistics, but there are some other folks who are going to show you some not so good statistics. And one thing I think that's really good about being able to do these programs is we get more data. We're helping people here, but we're also getting more data about how these programs can be run more effectively and more efficiently for taxpayers.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Vice Chair Zwingler.
Thank you so much, Chairman, and thank you for being here today, Shannon. We heard some claims in the bill layout about research not supporting these programs, but my understanding is the research is a little more complex, and there is some positive research. Could you talk a little bit about what we know so far?
Yeah, sure. I can address, I think, what Representative Troxclair was referring to first, and then I'll mention some other statistics that sort of counter those points. I mean, first of all, I think that the statistics she was referring to refer to an open research study that was done on a couple of different guaranteed income programs, one in Texas, one in Illinois, in 2024. And it did find that folks worked less. I mean, that's a fact. They found that.
But it was like 1.3 hours per week less.
It's a very small
right?
amount
Okay.
less, yes. And I would argue that I think, it's very possible, I think that what's going on there is folks who are having to work, let's say, 14 hours a day, maybe multiple jobs, are working a little bit less. And they're getting a little bit more time with their families. And I don't think we should discount the fact that that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? I mean, I think people's lives, the quality of lives, should be measured in more than the number of hours that they work. Not that that's not important, of course, obviously. People want to work, and that's something that I want to point out as well. So that's I think, what I would say about that. As far as the other programs, I mean, I just looked at some of the data around studies done on some of these Texas-based pilot programs. We had one in Austin, the Guaranteed Income Pilot, that ran from 2022 to 2023. Researchers found that recipients used more than half the money for housing support as intended. That was sort of the purpose of the program because of the rising rents in Austin. Housing stability and food security improved significantly among participants. 34% of participants, also used the payments for education or to build skills. By the end of the pilot period, 30% had raised their incomes or gotten better jobs. In San Antonio, there was a similar program that ran through 2021 and 22 that was sort of co-sponsored by the city and some nonprofit or some private philanthropy. And they found that approximately a third of participants increased their assets and emergency savings, and over half improved or maintained their housing stability. The last one I want to mention is actually from a New Mexico pilot program where 1/3 of the participants were from rural areas, and they found that among those rural communities, children saw major educational gains with a 13% increase in grade completion, and then rural employment for those folks grew by 14% during that time.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any other questions? Thank you for your
All right.
testimony.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Chair calls Caitlin Finley, FGA Action. She's on for the bill.